Most people think they lose muscle because they're not lifting enough weights or because they're getting older. And while those are certainly contributing factors, there's something far more insidious happening, and it's taking place every single night while you sleep. Let me walk you through the science. Nighttime catabolism is a physiological process that many people are unaware of. Yet it plays a significant role in muscle loss, especially during sleep. When we talk about catabolism, we're referring to the breakdown of complex molecules into simpler ones, often for the purpose of energy production. In the context of muscle tissue, this means the degradation of muscle proteins into amino acids. This process becomes particularly active during the night because of how the body's metabolism changes in response to the sleep cycle. Once you stop eating in the evening, your body slowly transitions into a fasting state. During this time, blood sugar levels begin to drop, insulin levels fall, and the body begins seeking alternative energy sources. If there's no incoming supply of nutrients, especially amino acids from protein, the body begins to draw from its internal reserves, and muscle tissue becomes one of the primary targets. This catabolic shift is especially concerning for individuals who are trying to maintain or build muscle mass. While most people focus on what they do during the day, their workouts, their protein intake, their recovery protocols, what happens at night is often overlooked. However, during sleep, the body's demand for certain nutrients doesn't stop. In fact, some of the most important recovery and rebuilding processes occur while you're sleeping. Growth hormone secretion increases, tissue repair accelerates, and cellular maintenance processes ramp up. These processes all require raw materials, specifically amino acids. If those aren't available in the bloodstream because the last meal was too long ago or lacked sufficient protein, the body must break down muscle tissue to release them. This muscle breakdown happens at a microscopic level. Specific enzymes such as ubiquitin proteasome and autophagy lysosome systems become activated, targeting muscle proteins for degradation. This is the body's way of recycling its own tissue to meet metabolic needs. It's not a mistake or malfunction. It's a survival mechanism. The problem is that this mechanism, while useful in situations of true starvation, becomes counterproductive when it happens regularly in individuals who are trying to retain or grow muscle. Over time, this repeated nighttime catabolism can add up to significant muscle loss, particularly if it coincides with other catabolic stressors like inadequate training stimulus, low total protein intake, chronic stress, or poor sleep quality. Another contributing factor to nighttime catabolism is the natural drop in anabolic hormones during sleep. While growth hormone does spike in the early stages of deep sleep, other muscle-supporting hormones like insulin and testosterone are typically lower during extended periods of fasting. Without the hormonal support and with no external supply of amino acids, the body defaults to a breakdown mode. It's a subtle process, not something that happens dramatically overnight, but over weeks and months, the effects become more pronounced, especially in aging individuals where muscle maintenance becomes more difficult due to anabolic resistance. The impact of nightly catabolism becomes more severe. What's critical to understand is that this process is happening quietly and consistently, whether one is aware of it or not. It's not about whether catabolism occurs. It's about how much of it is occurring and whether it's being counterbalanced by sufficient anabolic support from nutrition and training. Sleep initiates a fasting state that naturally alters the body's internal chemistry, shifting it from an anabolic to a catabolic environment. When a person falls asleep, they enter a phase where food intake is suspended for several hours. This prolonged absence of nutrient consumption results in a gradual decline in blood glucose and insulin levels, signaling the body to begin tapping into stored resources to maintain essential physiological functions. During this period, the body's primary concern is energy conservation and redistribution. Because energy is no longer coming in from food, the body must rely on internal stores of glycogen, fat, and if necessary, protein to meet metabolic demands. For those who do not adequately nourish themselves before bedtime, the likelihood of muscle tissue being broken down to support this process increases significantly. The fasting state triggered by sleep creates a unique metabolic environment where nutrient availability plays a crucial role in muscle preservation. With glycogen stores in the liver becoming depleted throughout the night, especially after several hours of sleep, the body must compensate by looking for alternative sources of glucose. One of the body's adaptive mechanisms in such a situation involves gluconeogenesis, the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, and amino acids from muscle protein are one of the primary substrates used in this process. This means that in the absence of dietary protein circulating in the bloodstream, muscle protein begins to be broken down into its constituent amino acids, which are then converted into glucose to keep the brain and other glucose-dependent systems functioning properly. This catabolic environment is intensified in individuals who may already be under-consuming protein during the day, or those who go to bed many hours after their last meal. Muscle tissue, while metabolically active and essential for health, is also a ready source of amino acids when the body is under nutritional stress. In a fasting state, the body prioritizes vital organs and brain function over muscle maintenance, leading it to degrade muscle protein in order to preserve more critical systems. This is especially problematic for individuals seeking to maintain lean muscle mass, athletes in high-performance training, or older adults who are already battling age muscle loss. Additionally, the body's hormonal landscape shifts dramatically in the fasting state associated with sleep. Insulin levels fall and glucagon levels rise, facilitating fat breakdown, but also reducing the anabolic signals necessary to promote muscle maintenance. Cortisol, a hormone associated with stress and catabolism, may also begin to rise as morning approaches, further promoting muscle breakdown if amino acids aren't readily available. These hormonal changes, coupled with a lack of nutrient supply, form a perfect storm for nighttime muscle loss. Even in well-trained individuals, the body doesn't distinguish between fasting that's intentional and fasting that's unintentional. If there's no protein coming in, it adapts by breaking down its own tissues. This entire process unfolds over the course of the night, quietly eroding muscle mass and making it harder to recover from workouts, build strength, or maintain metabolic health in the long term. Cortisol spikes in the early morning hours as part of the body's natural circadian rhythm, and this surge plays a significant role in muscle breakdown. Cortisol, a glucocorticoid hormone released by the adrenal glands, follows a diurnal pattern, typically peaking between 6 and 8 a.m., just before or shortly after waking. This spike serves a biological function. It helps the body transition from a state of rest to alertness by increasing blood sugar levels, enhancing focus, and mobilizing energy stores. However, cortisol also has a well-documented catabolic effect, meaning it promotes the breakdown of tissues, including muscle, in order to release amino acids and other substrates that can be converted into glucose through a process known as gluconeogenesis. While this may be beneficial in survival scenarios or when energy availability is low, chronically elevated or unbuffered cortisol surges can be detrimental for individuals trying to maintain or build muscle. The problem becomes more pronounced when this natural cortisol spike occurs in the absence of circulating nutrients, especially amino acids. After a night of fasting, if the body doesn't have an external source of amino acids to buffer against this hormonal surge, it pulls from its internal reserves, primarily skeletal muscle. This means that even people who are training hard and eating well during the day may still experience muscle degradation if their bodies are not adequately protected during this early morning window. The cortisol-driven breakdown of muscle tissue is not dramatic in a single day, but it compounds over time, leading to decreased lean body mass, reduced metabolic rate, impaired recovery, and even a weakened immune system if left unchecked. There's also a strong interaction between cortisol and other hormones involved in muscle maintenance, such as testosterone and growth hormone. While growth hormone is released primarily during the early stages of sleep and supports tissue repair and muscle growth, its effects can be offset by high cortisol levels the next morning if amino acid availability is low. Similarly, testosterone an anabolic hormone that supports muscle protein synthesis, can be suppressed by chronic cortisol elevation. The interplay of these hormones is delicate and highly dependent on nutritional status, sleep quality, and circadian alignment. If cortisol is allowed to peak without resistance from anabolic hormones or without a sufficient amino acid buffer in the bloodstream, muscle catabolism becomes a default metabolic response. This early morning catabolic window becomes even more relevant when considering the demands of modern life. Stressful wake-up routines, inadequate sleep, late-night screen exposure, and insufficient evening nutrition can all exacerbate cortisol's effects. Furthermore, individuals who exercise in the early morning on an empty stomach may unknowingly amplify this catabolic response, especially if training fasted and then delaying post-workout nutrition. The cortisol spike, already breaking down muscle tissue, becomes compounded by exercise-induced muscle damage without the immediate support of protein or carbohydrates to counteract it. The end result is that instead of using training as a tool for growth, the body may remain in a prolonged breakdown state unless strategic nutritional and behavioral interventions are employed to regulate this hormonal rhythm and protect muscle integrity. Lack of pre-sleep protein intake leads to a biochemical environment where the body begins to use muscle tissue as a source of energy and amino acids during the night. When an individual goes to sleep without consuming a sufficient amount of protein beforehand, they essentially enter a prolonged fast that can last anywhere from 7 to 10 hours, depending on sleep duration and the timing of the last meal. During this fasting window, the body still requires amino acids for various physiological functions, such as tissue repair, enzyme production, neurotransmitter synthesis, and immune defense. If dietary amino acids are not circulating in the bloodstream, the body turns to its own muscle stores to provide these essential building blocks. This process initiates muscle protein breakdown, whereby structural proteins in muscle fibers are broken down into free amino acids that can then be redistributed to support vital functions throughout the night. This becomes especially problematic for individuals who are actively trying to build or maintain muscle mass, because muscle protein balance is highly sensitive to the availability of amino acids. The human body operates under the principle of supply and demand, and when it detects a shortage of amino acids in the bloodstream, it triggers catabolic processes such as proteolysis to maintain homeostasis. Enzymes like ubiquitin ligases and components of the proteasome pathway become more active, targeting muscle proteins for degradation. These proteins are broken down and released into circulation to maintain amino acid levels for processes like gluconeogenesis, which is particularly important during the night as the body seeks to maintain stable blood glucose for brain function. Furthermore, when protein intake is low before bed, the opportunity for overnight muscle protein synthesis is significantly diminished. Muscle growth and repair don't occur only during workouts. They largely take place during deep sleep, when the body's regenerative processes are most active. This window is critical because growth hormone levels are elevated during the early phases of sleep, creating a potentially anabolic environment. However, without the necessary substrates, primarily essential amino acids like leucine, the body cannot effectively use the hormonal signals to drive muscle growth. The presence of growth hormone alone is not enough. It must be paired with the right nutritional inputs. Without them, the body shifts toward a maintenance or breakdown mode rather than a growth state. A common misconception is that if one consumes enough protein during the day, this will cover all periods of muscle maintenance. But research shows that the timing and distribution of protein intake can greatly influence muscle protein balance. A large protein-rich lunch or post-workout shake does little to support the body's needs 8 or 9 hours later during sleep. As the night progresses and amino acid levels fall, the body prioritizes survival over muscle retention, leading to subtle but continuous degradation of lean tissue. This is particularly relevant for older individuals and athletes whose protein needs are already elevated. In their cases, skipping pre-sleep protein not only limits recovery, but may also contribute to chronic under-repair and long-term reductions in strength and performance over time. Slow digesting proteins like casein can supply amino acids overnight in a gradual and sustained manner, which helps counteract the catabolic effects of fasting during sleep. Unlike fast digesting proteins such as whey, which are rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream and cleared within a few hours, casein forms a gel-like substance in the stomach. This slows gastric emptying and results in a steady release of amino acids over a prolonged period, often spanning 6 to 8 hours. This prolonged amino acid availability is especially valuable during sleep, when external nutrient intake stops and the body transitions into a catabolic state, if not buffered by circulating nutrients. By supplying a constant stream of essential amino acids, particularly leucine, isoleucine, and valine, the branched chain amino acids critical for muscle protein synthesis, casein helps maintain a more favorable nitrogen balance and reduces muscle protein breakdown throughout the night. The physiological significance of this lies in the way muscle tissue responds to nutrient availability. Muscle protein synthesis and breakdown are continuously occurring processes that fluctuate based on a variety of signals, including hormonal input, physical activity, and nutrient intake. When amino acids are consistently available in the bloodstream, the muscle remains in a more anabolic or neutral state, allowing for repair, growth, or maintenance. When amino acids are absent, the body enters a negative protein balance where muscle breakdown exceeds synthesis. Casein helps shift that balance closer to neutral or even positive during the nighttime window, which is often overlooked as a critical period for muscle health. Studies have shown that individuals who consume casein protein before bed experience higher rates of overnight muscle protein synthesis compared to those who consume no protein or fast digesting options. This is particularly beneficial after evening workouts when muscles are primed for repair, but nutrient supply may be insufficient if a proper post-training meal isn't followed by a sustained protein source. In addition to its slow absorption properties, casein also contains a full spectrum of essential amino acids, making it a high-quality protein choice. Its high leucine content is particularly important because leucine acts as a trigger for muscle protein synthesis via the mTOR signaling pathway. Although leucine's signaling effect is important, the availability of all essential amino acids is required for actual protein synthesis to occur. Casein's complete amino acid profile ensures that this requirement is met over an extended period. This can be especially valuable for older adults who experience anabolic resistance, meaning their muscles are less sensitive to the normal signals that promote growth. For them, having a sustained release of amino acids may help overcome this blunted response and reduce age muscle loss. Additionally, from a practical standpoint, casein is relatively easy to incorporate into a nightly routine. It can be consumed in the form of a shake, Greek yogurt, or even cottage cheese, all of which provide the same sustained protein effect. This makes it accessible and adaptable for different dietary preferences and lifestyles. It requires no major behavioral overhaul, only a strategic timing shift that aligns nutrient intake with the body's overnight needs. This approach is rooted in an understanding of both digestive kinetics and circadian physiology, making it a scientifically sound intervention for preserving lean mass and supporting muscle recovery during sleep. Pre-sleep nutrition is a critical window to prevent muscle atrophy because it directly influences the hormonal environment, nutrient availability, and recovery processes that occur during sleep. The hours during which the body is asleep are not passive. They are metabolically active and marked by numerous physiological events that depend on an adequate supply of substrates, especially amino acids. Sleep is when muscle repair is initiated, when growth hormone is released, when the immune system engages in repair, and when neurological recovery is underway. However, all of these processes require raw materials. And if those are not present due to poor pre-sleep nutrition, the body must draw from internal sources, including muscle tissue. This becomes a key contributor to the slow, silent progression of muscle loss, particularly in individuals who go long stretches overnight without consuming any protein, or who eat their last meal several hours before bedtime. Muscle atrophy doesn't happen overnight in a visible way, but the process begins with subtle daily imbalances between muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. Over time, these small deficits add up, resulting in a measurable decrease in lean body mass. The pre-sleep window offers an opportunity to intervene in this process by supplying the body with nutrients that help shift the balance toward maintenance or synthesis rather than degradation. When the body has access to a steady stream of amino acids overnight, it reduces its reliance on endogenous sources like skeletal muscle. This is especially important in individuals undergoing periods of caloric deficit, high training volume, illness, or aging, all of which elevate the risk of muscle breakdown. The body's circadian rhythm plays a role in determining how effectively it processes nutrients at different times of the day. And there is evidence suggesting that nutrient timing can amplify or blunt the body's anabolic responses. Pre-sleep nutrition leverages the body's natural cycles by aligning nutrient availability with nighttime recovery signals. For example, as growth hormone levels peak during the first few sleep cycles, having amino acids readily available allows the body to use that hormonal signal more effectively for tissue repair. Without those substrates, the signal goes unmet and catabolism may continue unchecked. Additionally, casein or other slow digesting proteins can blunt the early morning cortisol surge by providing amino acids to buffer its effects, thus mitigating some of the catabolic activity that would otherwise degrade muscle tissue. Beyond protein, other nutrients consumed before bed can further support recovery and muscle preservation. Carbohydrates, for instance, may help reduce cortisol levels and improve sleep quality by increasing serotonin production. Micronutrients like magnesium and zinc are involved in muscle repair and nervous system regulation, and consuming them through whole food sources in a pre-sleep meal can improve both recovery and sleep architecture. The timing, composition, and digestibility of the pre-sleep meal all play a role in determining how effectively it supports muscle maintenance overnight. When optimized, this window can be a strategic tool, not just to prevent muscle loss, but to enhance recovery, reduce soreness, and improve training outcomes over time through better overnight repair.